Chapter 1856. The two of them had nothing to do, so they chatted for a while. They enjoyed the rare time for just the two of them, chatting in an elegant environment. Naturally, it was very pleasant. However, good times were only short-lived. The two of them only enjoyed the peaceful time of a meal before Tai Butian had to go back. There was no other way. She was needed there. In the Chu clan courtyard, Tai Butian was the busiest person. Chu Yang, who used to be the busiest person, was not even in the top 5 now. Huyen Aobo, Xie Danfeng and the others were busier than him. And the second was Duan Tsungkong. With a good butler like Duan Tsungkong, how could Chu Yang not make good use of him? If it was still like before, where Chu Yang had to deal with everything, how could Chu Yang have the time to cultivate and improve his cultivation? Chu Yang, who was enjoying a rare moment of peace, naturally didn't know that a major event that could affect the future of the entire Heaven Palace had just happened here. He was still wondering, could it be that those bastards felt embarrassed after breaking my room, so they sneaked away? Otherwise, why can't I see anyone? This is really strange. Could it be that those people are actually embarrassed? If they were really embarrassed, why didn't they leave 1,000,000 purple cloud coins for me to repair my room? Forget it, it's just a small amount of money. I don't care about it. It's good that they're gone. My ears can finally be completely quiet. Seeing that the sky was getting dark, Chu Yang prepared to go back to meditate and cultivate. The sword spirit had been transferring a large amount of death energy back and forth several times a day in the past few days. Chu Yang's death energy dantian had already been filled to the brim. If not for the fact that a part of his death energy was gradually transforming into vitality, and the speed was getting faster and faster, he was really afraid that there was no place to accommodate the death energy. Death energy was something that could weaken all things. Even the tribulation space could only accommodate it temporarily. It could not hold it for a long time. Otherwise, it would be eroded. Chu Yang's current so-called cultivation was, to a large extent, a continuous process of transformation, and retransformation. Just as he was about to leave and return to the secret room to continue his cultivation, he suddenly felt a strange sensation. Suddenly, he felt an inexplicable movement in his dantian. There was actually an extremely rich water spirit qi permeating the air. In fact, Chu Yang was wantonly absorbing the death energy and converting it into life energy. Other than that, the other 7 dantians were also accumulating energy of various attributes bit by bit. However, compared to the death energy that could be absorbed almost infinitely and quickly, the difference was like heaven and earth. Even if the conversion speed of life energy was getting faster and faster, the difference was still like heaven and earth. However, it was not without growth. It was just that the rate of growth was relatively slow. It was precisely because the growth of other energies was relatively slow. Chu Yang was naturally very sensitive to other types of energy. So, he couldn't help but be shocked when he suddenly sensed the sudden surge of water vapor energy. He turned his head and stared blankly at the sparkling water column in front of him. This water actually contained such a dense amount of water spirit qi? Chu Yang couldn't think of this at all. A fountain that suddenly appeared in his living room actually contained such a dense amount of water spirit energy. Although he didn't understand what was going on, he still immediately sat down. If he returned to the secret room to cultivate, he might miss the opportunity to obtain the water spirit qi. Although cultivating on the spot would be a little risky, the benefits would be considerable. He immediately made a decision. Under this dome-like water curtain, he sat cross-legged and wholeheartedly operated the heaven-splitting divine technique. Since there was such a surging amount of water spirit qi here, why would he care so much? Let's absorb it first. The heaven-splitting divine technique was fully activated. As he operated the technique, Chu Yang immediately discovered a difference. The spiritual energy between heaven and earth, at this moment, actually surged like a tide. And the water spirit qi of the heaven-splitting divine technique in his body was also increasing at an astonishing speed several times faster than usual. Moreover, the extent was faintly increasing. Chu Yang didn't know that this was probably an unexpected but reasonable coincidence. Moreover, it was a coincidence that very few people other than Chu Yang could make use of. Previously, when Shuexian was angry and embarrassed, she slapped Wu Zhangxiu down. That slap was at least 50% of her true power. The strength of the slap was so strong that it directly slapped Wu Zhangxiu down into the underground water, and in order to not lose face, Wu Zhangxiu used his own divine technique to protect himself. Coincidentally, he further compressed the underground water to that place. When he came out, in order to show off his handsome figure, he even made this passageway as strong as steel. The final result was an ordinary-looking fountain, but in fact, it was very unusual. And under such strong compression, it caused the geocentric water spirit qi to produce a phenomenon of reverse flow. And Chu Yang built a pavilion out of romantic feelings. He even added a large metal plate on top of it. This further formed a reflecting dome. With such a few coincidences superimposed, it was in line with a certain formation. Strictly speaking, this kind of formation was very far away. However, in terms of the Earth's core water spiritual energy, it had to gather at this place after it rushed out. At least for the next few days, the water spiritual energy here was much, much denser than in other places. And at this moment, Chu Yang's mind was blessed as he sat down and operated his martial technique. This led to the geocentric water spirit qi, other than the initial little bit, not going to waste at all. It was all used by him as a great supplement. Between heaven and earth, because of this strange change, the spiritual energy slowly surged. Chu Yang could clearly feel that his water dantian was beginning to increase its spiritual energy little by little. With a turn of his mind, the great miracle medicine instantly appeared in the tribulation space. The water spirit qi of the spring of life also surged out. The medicinal efficacy of the elixir garden surged into the dantian like a tsunami. The primordial purple vapor in the tribulation space also began to move, rushing into Chu Yang's meridians. Chu Yang only felt that his body and mind were in perfect condition. The large amount of death spirit qi that the sword spirit had painstakingly transported, which was so huge that it couldn't be absorbed in time, was actually being absorbed, transformed, and poured into the life dantian at an astonishing speed visible to the naked eye. This was completely out of Chu Yang's expectations. Today, he coincidentally obtained a large amount of water spirit qi, and even accidentally activated a secret of the life and death dantian. In fact, the gradual transformation of the death spirit qi into the life spirit qi was not accidental. When the dantian of death was completely filled, things would move in the opposite direction when they reached an extreme. The extreme of death would give birth to life, but the transformation speed was not very fast. However, at this moment, because of the unexpected water spiritual qi, the spring of life, great spiritual herbs, primordial violet qi, and other miraculous treasures were stimulated, causing the transformation of the spiritual qi of life to accelerate. A large amount of spiritual qi of death was transformed into spiritual qi of life until the two were roughly equal. In other words, his death spirit qi had shrunk from its full state to a little more than 50%. However, his life dantian was already 50% filled with life spirit qi, and it was still slowly increasing. In terms of quantity, life energy had increased tremendously, while death energy had decreased correspondingly. It seemed to have no practical significance, but in fact, this transformation had far-reaching implications. In the future, regardless of whether there is an excess of life qi or death qi, they could all be transformed into each other. This state was the so-called unity of life and death, the fusion of yin and yang. Also, the infinite boundless mountain and the soul-suppressing stone still had large amounts of death spirit qi. He could definitely absorb and convert the energy without any hindrance. With the method of transforming spiritual qi of life and death, he could go a step further and wantonly consume it. At this moment, Chu Yang only felt as if his entire body was light as a feather, as if he had floated up into the clouds. And it was in such a miraculous state that he entered into a state where he forgot about everything around him. He did not sense in the slightest that the spiritual energy in the air above him had already undergone an exceptionally huge change. The purest portion of the various spiritual energies that filled the space between the heavens and the earth had quietly disappeared, and this area was still gradually expanding. In less than the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the The surrounding 1,000 kilometers had already been enveloped within. Outside the city, several old men who had been meditating in their respective tents were startled, rushing outside with a whoosh sound. Then, their figures flashed as they all flew into the air, observing carefully. Raising their heads to look at the situation in the sky, all of them had solemn expressions on their faces. "Have you all sensed it?" a white-clothed old man asked softly. However, the surrounding old men all nodded in unison, sighing, "We can no longer cultivate here, unless we walk out of this area." "That's right." A black-clothed old man's white beard fluttered in the wind. His eyes were filled with dread and envy as he slowly said, "This area is about 1,200 kilometers in radius. Although the spiritual energy still exists, the most essential part has already been lost. Moreover, no matter how we cultivate, we can't seize it or even intercept a single drop." Another white-browed old man closed his eyes and carefully sensed. Then, he shook his head disappointedly. "This is still nothing. What's truly frightening is that I can't find out where the missing part of the pure spiritual energy has gone." A group of old men snorted, "It's already specially absorbing the pure spiritual energy. How can it be detected by you? Elder Mu, you're the one with the best eyesight, experience, and knowledge in this group of people. Do you know what kind of technique this is? How can it be so overbearing?" An old man asked. "This? I really don't know." This white-browed elder Mu pondered and said, "However, I've heard that Emperor 1, Queen, and Holy Monarch all have similar techniques. And our current level is still far from that level. It's really unfathomable." Everyone had a bitter smile on their faces as they were shocked once again. Emperor 1, Queen, and Holy Monarch. It referred to 11 people. They were also the 11 most powerful people in the Heavenly Imperial Court. Emperor, it referred to the Emperor of the Great Heavenly Imperial Court. Queen 1, it was Demon Emperor Heaven, and Demon Empress. As for Holy Monarch, it was naturally Lord Saint of the Heavenly Imperial Court. As for whether other people have such techniques, I really don't know. Everyone only knows that the first 5 sect masters should know a little about it. A few old ancestors should have stepped into this category. Also, under Holy Monarch and Emperor 1, there should also be experts who have stepped into this realm. Although these people still have an insurmountable gap with Emperor 1 and Queen, they can more or less be controlled within a small range. However, compared to this person in front of us, I'm afraid they're still slightly inferior. Chapter 1857. The old man with white eyebrows took a deep breath. Based on my personal judgment, the person here shouldn't be at the level of Die or Empress. Then, could he be the mysterious guest from the strange auction some time ago? Speaking of this, everyone's face became a little gloomy. From P. That mysterious guest had good things, but he obviously gave them to the people of Donghuang Heaven. They came 2 days late and didn't even get to drink anything. Naturally, they felt uncomfortable. Facing such a terrifying existence that they could only look up to, everyone's heart was heavy. Although they all had their own thoughts, no one dared to really search for anything. What was the difference between rashly acting at this time and seeking death? Normally, the purpose of cultivation was to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to strengthen oneself. But there were also impurities in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. After absorbing it, one would use one's meridians as a channel and one's dantian as a purifier to refine and purify it over and over again. In the end, it would become a power that completely belonged to oneself. In other words, it was the purest and most refined spiritual energy. But now, this person directly ignored this process and directly absorbed the most refined spiritual energy from heaven and earth. After this, although the spiritual energy in the sky was still dense, the most refined part was already gone. In other words, no matter how hard one worked, even if one absorbed all the spiritual energy of heaven and earth here, in the end, it would be equivalent to wasting one's effort. Cultivating in the same place as such an existence was simply a great tragedy. And this was also the main reason why such a powerful existence could easily dominate an area. Who would be willing to share with others? If one couldn't afford to offend him, would one stay here and look for trouble? But now, these people here couldn't leave. Because, The secret of the soul-suppressing stone here hadn't been revealed yet. Even if they couldn't cultivate here, they couldn't leave. Therefore, everyone's face was as ugly as if they had eaten feces, where the soul-suppressing stone was originally. Once it was opened, the spiritual energy would definitely be so dense that it would cover the sky and earth. This kind of spiritual energy would definitely be a thorough cleansing of everyone's meridians. It would make a qualitative change in everyone. An astonishing improvement. That was probably the reason why everyone had come here. But now, with the existence of this terrifying person, it was as if everyone had come out for a vacation. Other than paying for the travel expenses, they could only enjoy the scenery. Not only did he waste time cultivating at home, he even had to risk losing his life. The group of elders once again sighed in unison and returned to their seats. They only felt somewhat depressed and stifled. She had never seen such a shameless old man. Wasn't this too degrading? For a mere soul-suppressing stone, it's still acceptable for people of our level to participate, but do you have the nerve to make a move? Was it worth the ticket price? Furthermore, he's still here and won't fucking leave. This seemed to be a treasure left behind by their predecessors for their descendants. But now, there was such a terrifying person holding the fort. Could it be that this old man was someone from before? Who knows? Very likely. What should he do? None of us seem to be able to do anything. One by one, they sighed. It turns out that we have traveled more than 100,000 miles. Just to be humiliated here? The old men were all extremely unhappy. Of course. Even if they were unhappy, they could only grumble in their hearts. Not to mention doing anything, they didn't even dare to voice out their displeasure. Even their expressions were basically the same as usual. They really didn't dare to show too much abnormality. Perhaps their current appearance was within the range of the other party's divine sense. As long as the other party was unhappy, they would probably lose their lives here. As for why they had such an understanding, the reason was actually very simple. It was because they had done similar things before. They were basically all old monsters who had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. Although they didn't do things like robbing, they had still done things like that. As for those who didn't agree with their way of doing things, most of them would punish them. If one of them didn't stop, killing one or two of them was really not a big deal. Perhaps this was another kind of people of the same mind, and their hearts share the same principle. Although the old men were worried, the younger generation was already in full swing. They were obviously very excited. Yun Tian seemed to have drunk some wine and was a little high. His handsome face was flushed red. He suddenly clapped his hands and recited loudly, "The Sky Sword Alliance produces outstanding talents, moving unhindered in the extreme heaven. They laugh at the winds and clouds and settle business, yet they ask if the southern sky is coming." When this sentence came out, besides being arrogant and conceited, there was also a hint of disdain for all living things. The face of a young man in the South Pole camp instantly turned gloomy. He laughed and said, "The southern wind moves the earth, blowing away the clouds in the sky. Brother Yun, why, are you going to fire at us southern sky first?" Yun Tian laughed loudly, showing a non-committal attitude. On the other side, the eyes of a stranger moved and said, "There is a ghost region in hell. When strangers meet, they draw their swords." The meaning of tit for tat in his words was completely undisguised. In Mo Yuntian's camp, a young man in black had a sinister smile on his face. He said indifferently, "If there is no ghost region, how can there be hell? Strangers on different paths lead to the same destination. You and I are strangers on different paths. We are strangers on different paths." The stranger also said indifferently, "I only know that strangers on different paths lead to different paths." Then, the two of them laughed together. One laughed sinisterly while the other laughed like a ghost. Everyone at the side couldn't help but have goosebumps all over their bodies. One of them was in the underworld sect while the other was in the ghost region. They both belonged to the top 10 supersects in the Heaven Imperial Court. The underworld sect was ranked first while the ghost region was ranked first. The cultivation methods of these two sects were very similar. It could be said that they were on the same path. The words of the two of them were also full of spears and sticks, competing with each other. On the other side, Zi Huang stood up confidently and waved his folding fan twice. He shouted, with a sword, when Shin is ethereal, one can move unhindered in Deluo heaven. Today, looking to the extreme north, I am free and unfettered. A sharp voice said, "What? You know that you can't afford to offend the dreamlike veranda of Eastern Royal Heaven, so you came to find me? Do you really think I'm a pushover?" From Kai Bei Tian's camp, a blue-clothed figure slowly walked out and shouted, "Zi Huang, is your heart-seeking sword pavilion going to fight my howling sky pavilion?" To be honest, Zi Huang was also depressed by this straightforward question. His biggest opponent, or even the heart-seeking sword pavilion's biggest opponent, had always been the dreamlike veranda of Eastern Royal Heaven. However, this time, the Eastern Royal Heaven didn't send anyone at all. A competition needed an opponent. If there was only one person, it was just pretending to be a fool. Under the circumstances, he had no choice but to use Kai Bei Tian to establish his prestige. Even he himself felt that he seemed to be a little weak. On this side, the young people of the two realms were fighting with each other. They were all hot-blooded young people who were destined to be enemies. No one was willing to give in. The battle of words was instantly set off, and the smell of gunpowder was very strong. Everyone would pay attention to each other's words, demeanor, and try their best to remember each other's words. They wouldn't even let go of each other's expressions when they said these words. In this way, they could guess the opponent's temperament and analyze the opponent's weakness. On the surface, they were all ready to fight, but in fact, each of them had their own thoughts. A group of old fellows narrowed their eyes and looked at the young people making a ruckus over there. Occasionally, they would turn to look at the infinite boundless mountain, and then turn to look at Purple Cloud City. Their eyes were full of wonder. At this moment, a gust of wind blew, and a pleasant voice said, "Oh, a group of people who got the news so early have actually started fighting now. What an imposing manner. It's a pity that we got the news too late, and can only watch the show." The tone was full of ridicule and anger, and it wasn't concealed at all. Old man Zhong Wei's face darkened. He turned to look, only to see figures floating in the air. It was the snow immortal Sea's young beau and the others who had come to denounce him. At a glance, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. It seemed that he really had to deal with this matter today. A moment ago, Chu Yang was still relaxed and happy, but now, he suddenly felt suffocated, a sudden suffocation. Yes, actually, this wasn't suffocation due to the extreme lack of air, but, when he circulated the heaven-splitting divine technique, he actually couldn't absorb any more. The spiritual energy above actually stopped being channeled. And the water spiritual energy below also stopped. As it stopped moving up and down, the other energies, such as the power of the Earth's core and the power of thick Earth, actually stopped entering. Originally, he was in that kind of comfortable feeling where his soul was wandering high up in the sky, floating like an immortal. But all of a sudden, the spiritual energy stopped. This kind of feeling was really unbearable. It seemed a little like when he was in the midst of doing something smoothly, and was in the mood to reach the peak, he suddenly couldn't and instantly became dispirited. What he felt then, what he felt now was more or less the same. Moreover, there was a kind of swelling feeling all over his body, as if his body was about to explode. Retracting his spiritual energy, Chu Yang opened his eyes and withdrew from that wonderful feeling. He faintly felt some regret in his heart. But he didn't know that his crazy absorption just now had caused all kinds of energies to flow in the tribulation space, and the energy of life and death to continuously change, and this water from the Earth's core came. This time, it really caused his big dantian to surge violently at the same time, and all the spiritual energy essence within a radius of thousands of miles was completely absorbed. Even the water spirit force that was hidden deep under the surface of the Earth was completely sucked dry. The death spiritual energy that the sword spirit had sent over previously, but because his dead dantian was already full, had been completely digested. The huge amount of death spiritual energy had actually been completely converted. The greedy Chu Yang opened his eyes regretfully, and opened his inner vision. Suddenly, he stood up abruptly. His hair stood on end. My God, how could this be? Chapter 1858. Even Chu Yang himself was so shocked by his own progress that he couldn't help but shiver. He had been practicing like this for the past few days. He had been progressing steadily, and the energy of life and death was constantly changing. But Chu Yang really didn't expect that just yesterday, when he was still at the halfway point, the energy of life and death in his dantian was almost full, but there was still a long way to go. But today, in just a short 6 hours of practice, his energy of life and death was full at the same time. Now, he had reached the peak of the earth level. No, he was at least twice as strong as an ordinary peak of the earth level. He was only one step away from breaking through to the heaven level. This amazing progress made Chu Yang's hair stand on end. How could he improve so fast? His divine consciousness flashed into the space. Just as he opened his eyes, his vision turned black. Is this my tribulation space? How could this be? Is there a great sorrow after great joy? At this moment, the sword spirit hurriedly returned. This wave of energy of life and death. Quick. Suddenly, his eyes widened. Oh. Swordmaster, are you planning to squander all our resources? Everything else in the space didn't matter, but the most important medicine field was showing signs of dispiritedness. Even the color of the great miracle medicine was slightly dull. It was no longer as vibrant as it used to be. Sir, what did you do? The sword spirit asked in disbelief. How could? How did your cultivation improve so much? This. I also don't know what's going on. Not long ago, I accidentally entered a super wonderful state. When I came back to my senses, I came back to this state. Chu Yang touched his head. He smiled bitterly. He explained everything. Is it an epiphany? The sword spirit's hair stood on end. But how could you enter such a transcendent state all of a sudden? It doesn't make sense. Epiphany? Chu Yang was stunned. What state is this? What does it mean? As the name suggests, it's an epiphany of the heavenly cycle. The sword spirit said blankly, that's the real comprehension of being one with the heavens. In such a state, no matter how much energy there is around you, it will all be swept away by you. He suddenly felt scared. Fortunately, the water spirit force had dried up first. Because of this, Chu Yang was forced to stop practicing martial arts. Otherwise, if he continued to absorb so crazily without any restraint, he believed that just the energy in the tribulation space alone would cause him to explode. Even if Chu Yang was lucky enough to survive, the calamity space would be destroyed as well. How dangerous. I say, Your Excellency, if you enter this realm again in the future, you must remember that you must not exceed 2 hours. Also, don't use the treasures in the tribulation space. Be careful. The sword spirit muttered, but I think I'm thinking too much. Even a martial saint expert would burn incense to thank the heavens if they were to experience such a state of enlightenment 2 or 3 times in their lifetime. At most, it would only last for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, 30 minutes. Chu Yang cried out involuntarily, but I've maintained it for a whole 6 hours just now. It can't be more or less. The sword spirit suddenly raised his head and felt a wave of dizziness. He almost fell to the ground. What? The sword spirit finished transferring the power of life and death this time. He almost went back in a daze just like that. He only left a sentence for Chu Yang. When the resurrection grass arrives, you must cultivate it immediately. Don't use it first. Remember. Then, he walked away in a daze until he was walking on the road. His mind was still in a daze, and he felt like he was dreaming. How could it be? It shouldn't be. It couldn't be, right? He was only at the earth level. He actually had an enlightenment of the heavens. He was only at the earth level, but he actually had an enlightenment of the heavens for 6 hours. What was going on? What was going on? Incomprehensible. 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 The sword spirit walked away in a daze. Chu Yang was not much stronger than the sword spirit. He also seemed to have fallen into a daze. Because even he himself didn't know what was going on, although his strength had indeed increased, and it had increased by a considerable amount, the increase in strength this time was filled with fear and trepidation. Enlightenment of the heavens was certainly the fastest way to increase one's strength, but the risk was also something that anyone could bear. If Chu Yang didn't have such a dantian and only had one like ordinary people, then this enlightenment would be enough to kill him. Even if he had 7 or 8 lives, It wouldn't be enough. Now that he thought about it, Chu Yang couldn't help but wipe away his cold sweat. Suddenly, he vaguely thought of something. Enlightenment. Enlightenment. Since it was enlightenment, then it shouldn't be just a simple increase in cultivation, right? Tribulation sword technique. Chu Yang's heart shook. He vaguely thought of something and pondered. Tribulation sword technique. Why was it called tribulation sword technique? It definitely wasn't because of the tribulation sword master. It definitely wasn't because of the tribulation. Because, in terms of the process, there was the tribulation sword technique first, then the tribulation sword master. Then there was the tribulation. This was a very obvious question of sequence. Then, why was the tribulation sword technique called tribulation sword technique? Chu Yang frowned. He vaguely felt that there seemed to be a big secret hidden in this. At this moment, there was a sudden bang. Somewhere not far away, there was a sudden surge of saber energy. 3 rays of saber light were dazzling in the night sky at the same time. A kind of coldness that almost tore his muscles apart instantly attacked Chu Yang. Poof! Du and Sungkong flew over. There's a fight between saber men not far away. A fight between saber men? Do you know who they are? Chu Yang frowned. It should be the wild thunder saber, giant spirit saber and lightning snake. Du and Sungkong's eyes flashed with fanaticism as he looked at the flashing saber light in the sky. He was a little sad and a little envious. Although they were still fighting, they were still in the martial world, but he himself had been out of the martial world for 1,000 years. Don't be so sad. The resurrection grass will arrive in 2 days. Chu Yang said lightly, Butler Duan, with your skills, you don't have to worry. You will be stronger than them. Du and Sungkong smiled. He was a little sad. I don't dare to have such extravagant hopes anymore. Now, I've already been reborn. It's good enough that I can recover. All these years, although my understanding of saber Dao has become deeper and deeper, but I've never wielded a saber again. The saber has long been gone. During this period of time, Chu Yang had discovered that this Du and Sungkong was actually quite a trustworthy person. Although his temper was very bad, although his character was somewhat unruly. But after 1,000 years of polishing, however, he had already tempered his originally blade-like temper into an infinitely restrained one. And the biggest advantage was that Du and Sungkong never went back on his word. So, Chu Yang was already prepared to accept him sincerely. It was no longer just an alliance formed by the exchange of interests. Don't worry, nothing is absolute in this world. Everything is possible. Chu Yang smiled lightly. You're not in good health now. Quickly go and rest. I'll go over and see what's going on over there. Because the saber light kept flashing over there, the battle naturally did not stop. And the battle seemed to be heading towards the Chu clan compound again. But it was not sure if it was blocked by someone or something else. Anyway, it just could not come over. But every time it sprinted, it would always be closer to the Chu clan compound. Chu Yang did not want these 3 guys to really rush over to the Chu clan compound. Just the saber energy alone, the little guys in the compound would not be able to withstand it. They would be injured if they were grazed by it, and die if they touched it. Even a little bit of contact with it might cost their lives. Du and Sungkong said, in that case, you have to be careful. A hint of sadness flashed in his eyes again. Housekeeper, bodyguard. Logically speaking, he should try his best to protect Chu Yang from harm. But now, he could not do anything. It was not that he did not want to, but he did not dare to. His heart was empty, and his strength was not enough. Chu Yang's figure rose, and with a flutter in the air, he disappeared without a trace. Du and Sungkong opened his eyes wide in surprise. Now, Chu Yang's body movements, speed, and strangeness were more than 1 level stronger than yesterday. No, it wasn't just a small increase. It was almost a multiplication. What was going on? Even immortal elixirs would not have such an effect, right? Chu Yang sped all the way, getting closer and closer to the location of the battle. But as he got closer and closer, the oppressive feeling that was full of lethality also became more and more uncomfortable. The reason was very simple. The people in the battle were really too strong. Their saber energy was not only a fatal threat to the children, but also to Chu Yang himself. Even at this moment when Chu Yang's cultivation had greatly improved, it was still the same. Even if he did not die if he grazed by it, he would be seriously injured if he touched it. Chu Yang, who was at the peak of the Earth stage, was not much stronger than the children to these three great sabersmen. The closer he got to the location of the battle, the clearer he could feel the biting cold saber energy flying in all directions. From time to time, after colliding, the saber energy would scatter in all directions like a bomb, cutting the space into pieces of irregular shapes. His destination, a small forest, where the saber energy was flowing freely. While Chu Yang was on full alert, he carefully and quietly approached. Whoosh! Saber light flashed. Chu Yang dodged abruptly, and 7 or 8 saber lights flew past him. Chu Yang suddenly felt a stinging pain on his arm. Looking sideways, he found that there was actually a small wound on his arm. Chu Yang was immediately horrified. He had tried to overestimate the danger of this place, but he did not expect it to be so dangerous. He was at least 1,000 feet away from the battlefield, but even at such a distance, with his current cultivation, he was still injured by a little bit of residual saber energy. Not to mention whether he could block it or not, he had already tried his best to dodge the saber energy, but he was still injured. This was too fucking exaggerated. How could he survive in this place? Chapter 1859. Suddenly, Chu Yang completely understood what Xi Sheqing had said before: when experts fight, the whole city nearby will suffer. Chu Yang was aghast and surprised. How powerful are these three vague figures that are fighting? However, according to Du and Sungkong's deduction, the three people fighting here should be Thunder Frenzied Blade, Giant Spirit Saber, and Lightning Serpent. That day, Grand Elder Hai of the Soaring Firmament sect berated Lightning Serpent and even challenged him to a battle on the spot. Lightning Serpent did not even dare to say a word, let alone accept the challenge. It was not difficult to determine that Lightning Serpent's cultivation base was definitely not as high as Grand Elder Hai's. In the past few days of interaction, Elder Hai was once again inferior to Shuezian. It seemed that the gap between them was not small. Shuezian was admittedly one of the few experts in the Dreamlike World Pavilion, but that was only on the surface. There were definitely many stronger experts behind her. Above the Dreamlike World Pavilion, there were still the first and second ranked sects in the Heaven sect. Their experts were even more numerous. Counting like this, the excitement of Chu Yang's breakthrough was completely gone. It turned out that he was still an ant. The road ahead was vast, and he still needed to work hard. It was just that it was meaningless to think about such high-end things now. It was better to focus on the present. The three people in front of him were already high-level existences that he could not measure. It was better to put aside those high-end things for the time being. Chu Yang stopped thinking and focused on the battle. He looked over and saw, in every blink of an eye, there were at least dozens or hundreds of collisions of sabers and saber energy. And during this period, there were countless punches and kicks. This was no longer a battle between humans, but a battle between demons waving the scythe of the Grim Reaper. Chu Yang was still far away from the battle site, no less than 1,000 feet. The sounds of fighting and talking could only be heard faintly. Bastard! How dare you leave? Stay. Busybody! What does it have to do with you? Bah! Why? Why do you have to interfere? Fuck you. Do you think I'm really afraid of you? Come. Me too. Chu Yang was confused. What was going on? The three people were fighting more and more fiercely now. Obviously, they had already lost their temper. He could not get close at all. What could he do? Chu Yang frowned. With a thought, he suddenly disappeared in mid-air. He stepped into the tribulation space. Of the three people who were fighting, which one of them wasn't paying attention to their surroundings? Of course, he had been paying attention to the commotion here and was surprised to see someone coming. They kept moving closer to where the three of them were fighting, trying to guess who was coming. However, without any warning, the person who was approaching them disappeared without a trace. This shocking change caused the three of them to tremble uncontrollably. What was going on? How could a person disappear into thin air? Even if the person's cultivation is extremely high, even if it is higher than Elder High of the Ling Xiao Gate or someone as strong as Shuezian, as long as they leave, we should still be able to sense them. Unless this fellow's cultivation had already reached the legendary Emperor realm. Only those who have reached that level can completely hide from the three of us. But this thought only flashed through his mind. Although he was thinking, his hands did not stop moving. At this moment, the battle was fierce and dangerous. Danger lurked everywhere. Their lives were in danger at every turn. It was impossible to concentrate fully. How could they still care about the danger that they might encounter later? Then, the three people's attention was once again focused on the fierce battle. The only thing they paid attention to was the other two opponents. Fortunately, the three of them were distracted at the same time. If they were the only ones who were distracted, there was a high chance that they would have been chopped into meat paste. Thinking of this, everyone felt a lingering fear. They focused even more and no longer had the time to care about anything else. Chu Yang had already steered the tribulation space and silently arrived above the battle. At this moment, although Chu Yang was in the tribulation space, he could still clearly see the progress of the entire battle. He could even see the expressions on the three people's faces and the twitching of every muscle. But the three of them could not see him. To make an analogy that transcended time, it was like a one-sided glass in a police interrogation room. Chu Yang was on the observable side, and the other three were on the observable side. Moreover, Chu Yang's tribulation space was obviously of a higher level. Not only was it one-sided, it could simply sense and move at will in all directions. Chu Yang looked at it and felt very relaxed. Suddenly, a thought came to his mind. He simply wanted to slap himself a few times. It seemed that he had this function a long time ago. Such a heaven-defying and useful function, but he had never discovered it before. If he had known this earlier, how many powerful enemies could he have killed with such a silent sneak attack? This was clearly a peerless and unparalleled assassination technique. But on second thought, it seemed that before he had obtained the 8th fragment of the Tribulation Sword, only his divine spirit could enter the tribulation space. Moreover, after he obtained it, there were not many fighters. Naturally, it was difficult for him to discover it in depth. Now that he had discovered it, it was too late. He immediately felt relieved. Now that Chu Yang had a wide field of vision, it was no different from watching the battle at close range. Although the three people's movement speed was astonishing, far beyond Chu Yang's current knowledge, he could still barely distinguish their appearances. Among the three people fighting in front of him, Chu Yang knew two of them. It could even be said that he had some dealings with them. As for the third person, although he did not officially know him, he knew who he was. The person in the lead was burly, with a curly beard. His eyes were fierce like lightning. The saber in his hand was the saint-level saber that he had just auctioned off. This person was undoubtedly the owner of the saber that day, Thunder Wild Saber. The other burly man was Giant Spirit Saber, who had also participated in the auction that day. As for the last person, he was the most agile. His figure was as ethereal as smoke, unpredictable and mixed with a kind of gloomy smell. He was definitely Lightning Snake, who had made a sound on the day of the auction but did not show his figure. The three great saber artists were gathered here. Unlike the money fight in the auction house, this was a martial fight that turned the sky and the earth upside down. At this moment, Lightning Snake was shouting in exasperation, "If you say that Thunder Wild Saber attacked me, it's fine. We already had a grudge against each other. Moreover, that little one had done him a little favor. But Giant Spirit Saber, why are you doing this? What does this have to do with you? Why are you blindly joining in?" Giant Spirit Saber laughed, "Smelly long worm, you're right. There's nothing to do with me here. But, I'm old and my hands are itchy. I can't help but want to join in when I see you guys fighting. What's wrong?" As he said this, he suddenly chopped his saber towards Lightning Snake. Lightning Snake dodged and blocked. Giant Spirit Saber's saber had changed direction in an instant, and chopped towards Thunder Wild Saber. Thunder Wild Saber shouted and blocked with his saber. The two people chopped at each other without any tricks. Then, their bodies flew away. While flying, they each sent out a saber attack towards Lightning Snake. Lightning Snake was mad with anger. He cursed loudly, "Damn Thunder Wild Saber, is that Chu Yang your godfather? Didn't he just say a few words for you at the auction? Is there really such a big friendship between us? Didn't you also give him 50,000 purple cloud coins for free? Isn't that enough to repay the friendship between us? You're risking your life for this. Are you stupid?" Thunder Wild Saber laughed like thunder. "Even if it's not for this friendship, I won't let you off easily just because you maliciously raised my price that day. Smelly long worm, today, you're destined to become a dead long worm. Fuck." Lightning Snake cursed angrily. Then, he hurriedly blocked the joint attack of the two people. The situation of the battle was extremely strange. Chapter 1860. Chu Yang watched the battle with great interest. At the same time, he analyzed in his heart, "This Lightning Snake seems to be here to kill me, and that Thunder Wild Saber is here to stop him. And Giant Spirit Saber is purely someone who wants to see the world plunged into chaos." But it had to be said that the fighting styles of these three people were different. But their understanding of the way of the saber was different. Although he only watched the battle for a short while and didn't see it very clearly, he already felt that he had benefited a lot. The only thing he didn't understand was, isn't this Lightning Snake a little too narrow-minded? Just because I said that I stopped him from casually bidding that day, he actually wants to kill me. This is too arrogant. Daring to harm me, aren't you afraid of death? Don't you know that the Iron Blood Alliance was destroyed because of one of them who wanted to kill me? Well, it seemed that not many people knew about this. In fact, the destruction of the Iron Blood Alliance wasn't a secret to the higher-ups of the Eastern Royal Heavens. But to the lower-level martial artists, it was still a big secret. At this moment, the sinister and thin Lightning Snake suddenly looked up to the sky and roared. Countless saber energy gushed out from his body and from his saber. He roared angrily, "Since that's the case, then you can go to hell." His thin and weak body suddenly lit up. Countless sharp saber auras instantly condensed into solid objects and flew out in waves. But his body fell into a state of stillness. Only the long saber in his hand became brighter and brighter like a light, more and more dazzling. Facing such power, Thunder Wild Saber and Giant Spirit Saber quickly took a step back. They knew that the Lightning Snake was probably going to go all out. Everyone's heart was on high alert. A loud roar. Chu Yang focused all his attention and looked over. Around the Lightning Snake, thousands of saber energy like snakes suddenly broke out of his body. They were like huge pythons that could swallow heaven and earth, pouncing on the two opposite lightning snakes. All the saber energy. With a strange speed that was sometimes fast and sometimes slow, they gradually approached from different angles. They were actually clearly layered and the landing point of each saber energy. They were still unpredictable. The only thing that could be confirmed was that they were all landing on the fatal parts of the two opposite lightning snakes. What an exquisite saber! Chu Yang's eyes lit up as he watched. If it wasn't for his standpoint, Chu Yang would have liked to praise this saber move out loud. How great would it be if Dong Wushang could see this saber strike, or rather this battle? The benefits to him would be the greatest. The two people opposite him roared at the same time, myriad snakes devouring the heavens. This was the lightning snake's desperate move, and it was also his strongest killing move. The two of them had never thought of it before. This guy was actually forced to such a state by him. The two of them fought back and forth in high spirits. Only when the lightning snake couldn't hold on any longer. The two of them had only exchanged a few blows, so most of the pressure in the battle was borne by the lightning snake. How could the lightning snake not be enraged by this outcome? The two of you are relaxed. But it was a 1 versus 2 fight. Only when the old man can no longer fight will you give him a chance to catch his breath. Wait until you're old and energetic, then continue to fight. How can you bully people like this? Are you playing dumb? Since you want to play, I'll play with you until the end. Let's see who dies. With the fierce move coming, the Thunderclap Wild Saber and the Giant Spirit Saber naturally wouldn't sit still and wait for death. They immediately counterattacked with corresponding moves. Sharp saber energy shot out from the bodies and sabers of the two people opposite them, heading towards the lightning snake's side. The speed had obviously reached an unimaginable level, but in the eyes of others, it was incomparably slow. Extremely slow. Chu Yang looked at the scene nervously. He knew that the outcome of the battle between the three of them would be completely decided after this move. It seemed slow, but it was actually fast. Boom! 3 equally sharp saber lights, at the same time, launched the fiercest collision in the most central area. At the same time, the three of them roared at the same time. The long sabers in their hands slashed out countless times at this moment. The whole world was suddenly filled with crisscrossing saber lights. Looking from afar, one could see that a bright and colorful lightning ball had completely exploded here. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Puff puff puff. Countless saber energy could no longer be perfectly controlled and flew out in all directions. The small forest where the battle took place could be considered to have suffered a calamity. Almost all the trees, in that instant, were completely turned into powdery sawdust. Fluttering in the air. Puff, puff, puff. Along with the dull sound, 3 muffled groans sounded at the same time. In just a moment, the smoke and dust that filled the air dispersed. In 3 directions, the 3 of them stood there with bent backs, holding their long sabers in their hands. Blood slowly seeped out from countless places on their bodies. But each of them fiercely raised their heads, their eyes fixed on their opponents. See who exactly it was, fall down first. Dust began to fall from the sky, fluttering in the air, as if it was snowing heavily. After a long time, puff. The thin and weak body of the lightning snake was the first to sway. There were at least 70 to 80 saber wounds on his body. But what really made him unable to stand was the saber wound on his knee. It was a wound so deep that the bone could be seen. Forcefully suppressing it, forcefully supporting it, there was a limit. Once he couldn't suppress it, blood spurted out like a fountain. His body shook violently, and he clenched his teeth to force himself not to fall down. But his body shook more and more violently. Finally, he sighed and sat down on the ground. As his posture changed, his legs curled up. At the same time, blood spurted out from his knee. His white bones were completely visible, flickering with a cruel radiance. Although the lightning snake made the first move and took the initiative, the opponent was still 2 people working together. Furthermore, any one of them had true strength that wasn't inferior to the lightning snake himself. How could he not be defeated when fighting 1 against 2? But the injuries of the other 2 weren't much better. On the opposite side, the burly body of the Thunder Wild Saber was like a blood hedgehog. His body constantly emitted blood-colored thin lines, and hundreds of thin lines crisscrossed. On the other side, the giant Spirit Saber wasn't any better. There weren't many wounds on his body, but 2 of his ribs were broken, and 1 of his shoulders was almost broken, almost at the same time. The 2 of them sat down on the ground at the same time. It was a situation where all 3 of them were defeated and injured. A pool of blood slowly spread out from under the 3 of them. The 3 of them felt a burst of intense dizziness in their heads at the same time. This was a symptom of excessive blood loss. There was a possibility of dizziness. This kind of injury wasn't necessarily fatal, but even the most brilliant experts couldn't avoid this kind of symptom. He shook his head hard, trying to sober himself up. But he inadvertently touched the wound on his neck. The Thunder Wild Saber groaned in pain and cursed, "Damn long worm. Damn you. Do you have to risk your life like this?" The giant Spirit Saber gasped for breath and smiled bitterly. "Is this damn long worm crazy?" As the 2 of them spoke, they took out pills from their pockets and consumed them. They were all desperados, so how could they not have some life-saving pills? Bullshit. The lightning snake trembled and took out a medicine bottle from his pocket. He raised his neck and swallowed a dozen pills in the bottle. He gasped and said, "You 2 are shameless. 2 against 1. If you don't risk your life, can you do it?" "Of course you can if you risk your life." The giant Spirit Saber smiled bitterly, "But look at us now. We can't move at all. Any profound or spirit level would be able to take our lives. If we were to die like this, we would die like this. I'll curse you even if I go to hell. The lightning snake glared. Then, he softened and said, how can there be such a coincidence? The thunder wild saber said angrily, there are always unexpected things in this world. Chapter 1861. The three of them were completely suspicious of the senior's words. Just based on his ability to speak from nothingness, the three of them probably wouldn't be able to do it even if they cultivated for another 30 to 50,000 years. Was there a need for him to lie to the three of them? Not to mention that he had such a good excuse. Even if he did not have an excuse, he just did not like them. Wasn't that also a good reason? This. That. Senior. Thunder Frenzied Blade stammered, this matter. We really didn't think of it. Once he heard that he had lived in seclusion for tens of thousands of years, he must be a senior. Maybe he was a senior's senior, did not expect this, forget it. Everything is destined. Ha. I don't blame you for not knowing. Since it's destroyed, then let it be. The person in the air laughed. The three of them could feel that this sentence was said beside their ears. They could even feel the heat from the other party's breath, but they could not see him at all. They could not help but feel their hair stand on end. They were almost scared to death. Even if their bodies were fine, they would not dare to move at this moment, but the three of them were more or less relieved. A senior was indeed a senior. He did not get angry and kill ZJ immediately. If not, how could he be a senior? There was still room for negotiation. Not blaming you is one thing. But you have destroyed my forest. You should at least give me an explanation, right? The voice said. Yes. We will definitely compensate you. The three of them were overjoyed. Compensation? Isn't this wrongy? Yes. Since you are willing to compensate, then let's talk about the compensation. Let's not talk about the compensation. Although they are all 10,000 years old, they are not worth it. It's just that this forest has been with me for hundreds of years, so I'm a little reluctant to part with it. Since you didn't do it on purpose, I won't make things difficult for you. The three of you shouldn't leave for the time being. Stay here and help me replant trees. You just need to plant the trees until they are as big as this forest. It's not too long. 500 years will pass in the blink of an eye. The old voice replied indifferently, this old man is still in a good mood. I won't kill your entire family. Plant trees for 500 years. The three of them looked at each other. All we did was chop down a few trees. Why do we have to make 3 swordsmen at the peak of the saint level work here as slaves for 500 years? This price is too high, isn't it? Besides, if we plant trees here for 500 years, the flowers will be cold by then. We still have other things to do. Senior, please make an exception. The three of them pleaded together. The old voice said, since I'm an old man, if you want to make an exception, I can do it, but I'm afraid you won't be willing. The three of them nodded profusely. Yes. Of course he was willing. As long as we don't plant trees, it's fine. Yes. Since that's the case, help me do something else. As the old voice spoke, a jade bottle fell from the sky with a pater sound. There are 3 pills in the jade bottle that can heal your injuries. Consume it. The old voice said. The three of them looked at each other in dismay. Looking at the jade bottle that was right in front of them, none of them stretched out their hands. The old voice sighed. Look at your useless faces. With your current state, do I need to poison you to kill you? This old man can kill you with a puff. Whether you are injured or not, does it make a difference to me? The three of them trembled in fear. That's right. If he wants to kill us, he doesn't even need to lift a finger. Just a puff is enough, and he wants to poison us? Thunder Frenzied Blade was the first to pick up the jade bottle and opened it forcefully. The three of them sniffed at the same time. It's too fragrant. Just by smelling this fragrance, they felt comfortable all over. It was as if their injuries were alleviated. What kind of miraculous medicine is this? Zhu Ling Dao couldn't help but stretch out his hand and say, I'll take one first. With such a miraculous effect, even if it's poison, I'll accept it. As he said that, he snatched one and swallowed it. Immediately, Uran's eyes widened. He wasn't the only one who widened his eyes. Lightning Snake and Thunder Frenzied Blade's eyes also widened, because, in less than 2 breaths after consuming it, Zhu Lingdao's face was no longer ugly. There was even a faint blush on his face. White smoke was rising from his head. The heavy injuries on his body were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The damaged muscles and tendons were also wriggling as though they had their own lives. They reconnected on their own and were surrounded by the regenerated muscles. Then, the surface of the skin was regenerated. In just a few moments, his skin was as clean as new. Zhu Lingdao looked at the changes on ZJ's body. He opened his mouth wide and mumbled, "What the hell is going on? Even the old injuries from 3 years ago are gone. Give me one now." Lightning Snake urged angrily. Gulp. Thunder Frenzied Blade swallowed one first. He rolled his eyes and said, "Why should I give it to you first? I'll take one first to test its effects. After I'm sure it's not poisonous, I'll give it to you. I'm doing this for your own good. You bastard." Lightning Snake was so angry that he almost fainted. "How can it be poisonous when you're already in this state? My injuries are the most serious, after a long, long time." The 3 of them stood there in a daze. They looked at all the external injuries on ZJ's body. Just a moment ago, they were still unbearably horrifying. Now, his skin was as smooth and tender as a freshly peeled egg. There were no traces of lewdness. Pooey. It's not that they couldn't be seen, but they were completely healed. Even his heavy internal injuries had recovered by at least 30% in that instant. Is this a fucking medicine? The effects of this medicine are simply heaven-defying. The 3 of them were a little confused. Firstly, it was because of the miraculous effects of the medicine. They had never seen such a miraculous medicine in their lives. Secondly, it was because they had received such a huge favor for no reason. Furthermore, they had offended the other party first, destroyed his forest, and even many tens of thousands of years old elixirs. Yet, the other party was so magnanimous that he didn't say anything when he asked them to do anything. First, he gave them elixirs and elixirs. They really owed him a huge favor. The 3 of them were stunned for a long time before they remembered to thank him. However, they were confused again. The other party had not said a word since he threw the medicine at them. "Senior, are you still there?" Thunder Frenzied Blade asked cautiously. "These are fucking words. This old man has always been here. It's just that your cultivation is too weak to notice. Don't you need me to protect you while you heal?" The old voice's words made the 3 of them shed tears of gratitude. No wonder they didn't even see a bug earlier. So it was this powerful existence who was protecting them. "May I ask what Senior wants us to do for you? As long as it's within our abilities, we will definitely do it." Lightning Snake asked respectfully. "Actually, it's nothing much. The elixirs are a small matter. If they're gone, we can just plant them again. Although this old man has some feelings for this forest, it's still a forest. After all, it's just a forest. How can I make things difficult for the 3 of you? Sigh. If they're gone, so be it." The old voice sighed with a hint of melancholy. After saying this, there was a moment of silence. The 3 of them felt extremely guilty and couldn't say anything. The forest was worthless. But he had personally planted it. He had protected it for hundreds of years. How much effort, energy, and feelings did he have for it? But it was destroyed by ZJ's blade. There were also those elixirs that were tens of thousands of years old. The 3 of them didn't doubt it at all. If those elixirs weren't made from tens of thousands of years old elixirs, how could they have such amazing effects? Sigh. Damn it. Since you have the heart to compensate, this old man won't reject you. It's just that this old man doesn't need you for anything. Ian, how about this? I have a junior in this Purple Cloud City. His strength is still weak. Now that Purple Cloud City is in turmoil, this old man doesn't have the patience to look after him every day. If you have the heart, then go over and help me take care of him. If you're unwilling or inconvenient, this old man won't force you." The old voice had a hint of melancholy. "Senior, may I know the name of this junior?" Lightning Snake gritted his teeth and asked. At this moment, he made up his mind. Since he had received such a favor and owed such a big favor, he had to take good care of this junior no matter what. His name is Chu Yang. It's very easy to find him. The current owner of the Heavenly Armament Auction Hall is him. That little one is too weak, too young, and doesn't know much. The old voice sighed and muttered, young people nowadays can only truly grow up and become sensible. However, the Lightning Snake was stunned. What? Chu Yang? The owner of the auction hall? The one that ZJ was clamoring to kill just now? In an instant, Lightning Snake only felt that ZJ's face was on fire. This time, he was really embarrassed to death. Then, there was fear, real fear. ZJ seemed to be too lucky. Rugwa didn't fight to the death with those two. If this senior had known ZJ's original intention, ZJ would have died 800 times already. How fortunate. On the other side, Thunder Manic Blade and Giant Spirit Blade both began to chuckle, their bellies filled with schadenfreude. This junior of mine doesn't know about this old man's existence. The old man laughed self-deprecatingly. All right, let's do it this way. If the three of you have the heart, please help this old man. If not, then forget it. He sighed and said, this old man will take his leave. Whoosh. A gust of wind blew. Senior. Senior. The three of them shouted at the same time, but they couldn't hear the old voice anymore. At this moment, it was as if that mysterious old man had walked to the ends of the earth. The three of them felt melancholy in their hearts. How could such a senior of the pugilistic world not be respected? Such poise, such character, such elegance. Although they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, but this formless magnanimity had completely convinced the three of them. I've decided. Lightning Snake's voice was still eerie, but he said seriously, I'll go find Chu Yang now. And stay by his side. Protect him. How can these three people in front of me say such words? This is too inconceivable, too unimaginable, right? Fishy Guy widened his eyes in confusion and shook his head. Just now, it seems that I might have heard that the three Saber Saints at the pinnacle level are going to join Chu Yang. Oh my god, this is simply a big joke. And they actually said they would give us a meal. Fuck you. Something fishy suddenly stopped, but his hand was still holding the teapot. He continued to unconsciously pour the tea, and the boiling hot tea naturally continued to pour out, but it deviated from its original direction. Therefore, the boiling hot tea poured down onto the Lightning Snake's thigh. Cough. The Lightning Snake frowned. Before the boiling water touched him, he moved his thigh away. Hey, wake up. I said, stop dreaming there. Fortunately, I'm quite agile. Otherwise, I would have been cooked by you. Are you trying to buy someone's life? This was the current Lightning Snake. If it was the past Lightning Snake, even if he knew that Sneaky Cat didn't do it on purpose, he would still give Teacher Cat a good lesson. Ah why meow. Ah why meow. Sneaky Cat was flustered for a moment. He quickly put the teapot aside to wipe it, but just as he let go, the teapot fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. It turned out that he missed. Behind the screen, Tai Buttian covered her face. This is so embarrassing. Brother Cat, it doesn't matter if you go out and embarrass yourself. That's only embarrassing your cat clan. But now, you're embarrassing our Chu clan. Sneaky Cat waved his sleeves in a flurry and swept the teapot away. Then, he pretended to be calm. I just heard that. You want to seek shelter with us? Not you, we want to seek shelter with Chu Yang. The Lightning Snake looked at this lazy cat with a somewhat unfriendly gaze. The more he looked, the more he felt that this guy was a little silly. Not only did he not do his job well, he couldn't speak clearly, and his hearing was also abnormal. Even his comprehension ability was problematic. Look at this guy's big head and thick neck. His 3 whiskers. One look and you can tell that he's the kind of person who doesn't have a bright brain. Forget it, he couldn't possibly lower himself to this kind of person's level. He really had a *** hole to say. Seek shelter with Chu Yang. You're here to seek shelter with Chu Yang and make a living. Sneaky cat repeated mechanically. The three of them became more and more dissatisfied. This guy was a little too arrogant. It was true that they were here to seek shelter, but there was a reason for that. Was there a need to repeat it over and over again? It seemed that seeking shelter with an ant was always a bad thing. The three of them still cared more about their reputation. At this moment, a loud laugh came from outside the door. "Brother Cat, what's wrong? Are there guests visiting?" Sneaky Cat jumped out as if he had been granted amnesty. "Isn't that so? Let me tell you. Those who come are all important guests. They have been waiting for you for a long time. This cat is a little dizzy now. You take care of the rest." Chu Yang smiled and walked in. Sneaky Cat lowered his head and followed behind him. "The three of you are..." Chu Yang's face was full of confusion. It seemed that there was even a faint hint of fear. Chu Yang was very talented in acting. This act was quite on point. "I'm Thunder Wild Blade. I had the chance to meet Villa Master Chu at the auction that day. I thank Villa Master Chu again for his generosity and straightforwardness that day, resolving the dispute between me and my friend." The three of them stood up at the same time and introduced themselves. Their attitudes were very respectful. Thunder Wild Blade was the one who had the closest relationship with Chu Yang among the three. Naturally, he was the first to speak. "I'm Lightning Snake. Cough cough. I also showed my face at the auction that day. Cough cough. I also spoke." If Thunder Wild Blade didn't speak up to help him smooth things over, Lightning Snake really didn't know how he would greet Chu Yang. After all, the two of them had a little conflict before. "I'm Giant Spirit Blade." That day, Giant Spirit Blade had the least interaction with Chu Yang. He was the last to greet him. "Ah, I remember. Chu Yang pretended to be suddenly enlightened and went forward intimately. "Why have the three seniors come here? It's really an honor. Come, serve tea. The purpose of our visit this time is to seek refuge with Villa Master Chu. We hope that Villa Master Chu will take us in," the three of them said at the same time. After they finished speaking, they raised their heads to look at Chu Yang's expression. They thought to themselves, "Is this guy also shocked? Seek refuge with me?" Chu Yang was stunned. The three seniors aren't joking. Since the matter had become a foregone conclusion, of course they had to fight. Besides, at the very least, they still had to go through the motions. "It's true. We're not joking," Lightning Snake emphasized. His sinister voice still made people panic. Chu Yang frowned. "It's naturally my honor that the three seniors think so highly of me. Unfortunately, my temple is too small. I'm afraid it can't support three big bodhisattvas." Chapter 1863. The three of us really want to seek refuge with Manor Lord. Manor Lord Chu is a young hero. Why must you reject us? Wild Thunderblade said, "Manor Lord Chu does not need to worry. Since we have come to seek refuge with Manor Lord, there is no need for Manor Lord to treat us as seniors. If there is anything you need us to do, please do not hesitate to ask. We will not interfere in any of the matters of the Chu residence. Everything will be done according to Manor Lord Chu's orders. Manor Lord Chu can arrange as you wish." Originally from Chu Yang pondered. The three of them understood Chu Yang's hesitation very well. Suddenly, three saint-level experts had come to seek refuge from an ant. Their words were so sincere, and their actions were so humble. Anyone who had the slightest bit of scheming would hesitate. They would doubt the motives of these three people. If they didn't doubt them at all and happily accepted them, then that would be unreasonable. The three of them were anxious in their hearts. They were afraid that Chu Yang would have doubts, and wouldn't dare to accept them. So, they repeatedly explained that they didn't have any enemies, and wouldn't bring any trouble to Chu Yang. In short, there was no harm in accepting them. But they did not know that after this series of explanations, they had already completely lost the initiative on their side. They were meat on someone's chopping block. In the end, they did not even have the right to raise any conditions. In the end, Chu Yang was very hesitant and reluctantly agreed. He accepted the 3 sword saints to be the protectors of the Chu clan courtyard. They would only take orders from Manor Lord Chu Yang. When Chu Yang was not around, they would be under the control of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion Master and Mistress Tai Butian's orders. Other than that, they were completely free. As for the mysterious Heavenly Armament Pavilion Master, Chu Yang only vaguely explained that he was a mysterious senior expert and so on. He was often elusive and so on. Lightning Serpent and the other 2, who hadn't even become consecrators, naturally believed that this mysterious senior expert must be some expert that the mysterious senior had arranged before. It was even possible that he was that senior himself. Once they thought of this, they immediately understood. The 3 of them were not only not displeased with such an arrangement, they even felt a little excited. Thus, both sides were happy and reached a consensus. Fishy, who was watching from the side, was completely petrified. What was going on? Since when were sword saints so worthless? Let's not talk about begging to be taken in by Chu Yang. Moreover, the conditions that Chu Yang had proposed were extremely harsh. Yet, Chu Yang had happily accepted them. Are these people crazy? Did water get into his brain? Or was he confused by the fever? Hey! Fishy stood up while holding his forehead. He didn't know what was going on with the Lightning Serpent and the other 2 for the time being. In any case, his brain seemed to have gone haywire. He couldn't accept the things that were happening right now. He walked out in a daze. As he walked, he muttered, "What's going on? What the hell is going on? Oh heavens, this world is going crazy. The weasel race is going to marry the cat race as a bride." Even the wise and far-sighted Tai Butian couldn't figure out what was going on. Reality was really too strange. It was so strange that it was hard to describe. That night. Why do I still feel that today's matter is a little strange? Tai Butian said softly. It's not strange, it's not strange. Chu Yang said calmly, you only need to know that these 3 people are sincerely asking to be taken in. They can be completely trusted. Okay, that's enough. Tai Butian's bright and beautiful eyes turned. Huh? Is this your doing again? Why is it my doing again? Why do I have to use again? Chu Yang didn't say anything else. He just smiled and his large hands wandered all over Tai Butian's body. He murmured, Your Majesty, let's not worry about these national affairs for now. It's still too far away. Let me feel which part of Your Majesty's body is the smoothest. Tai Butian let out a moan. Cough, I'm lazy. Millions of words have been omitted here. The next day, Chu Yang was quietly cultivating under a flowering tree somewhere in the Chu clan's courtyard. Since dawn, he had been sitting here, facing the east and absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Although he did not enter the heavenly spirit epiphany realm this time, the spiritual chi essence within a radius of 1,000 miles still swept over. If others wanted to cultivate, they could only sigh and sigh helplessly. As he cultivated, Chu Yang only felt that the Niwen Palace on top of his head was beating non-stop. Gradually, he felt a little uneasy. Then, he stopped. Chu Yang understood the principle of more haste, less speed. The current situation was obviously a sign of a breakthrough. However, although his dantian was full now, the advancement this time was really too fast. His foundation was unavoidably not stable. If he immediately broke through to the heaven stage, it might affect his body instead. This hurried foundation would be completely ruined, and he might even lose the chance to stabilize it again. Manor Lord, are you cultivating? A soft and feminine voice sounded. The person who came was Lightning Snake. Last night, the 3 of them didn't introduce their cultivation level. However, Chu Yang knew that the lowest of the 3 was at the peak of the Saint stage. This level of cultivation, although not comparable to Snow Immortal or Elder High, could already be considered top-notch. Brother Snake, you're up so early. You must be cultivating too? Chu Yang stood up. No. It's just that seeing Manor Lord cultivate, I'm a little itchy. Why don't I spar with you? Lightning Snake's feminine voice was a little cautious. He said, Manor Lord's cultivation progress is very fast, but your foundation seems to be a little unstable. I'm afraid. Chu Yang's eyes lit up. Brother Snake, You're really sharp. In that case, please give me some advice. Lightning Snake smiled cheerfully. Not at all. We're just exchanging pointers. Lightning Snake said this not to be modest. He knew that although the person in front of him looked like an ant, the person in front of him was actually very powerful. If he could seize the opportunity to curry favor with him, it would be his own advantage. Chu Yang walked out slowly. As he walked, he smiled and said, "Oh right, since the three of you are here, why don't you reveal your true identities? You're not even willing to reveal your names. This is something that I really don't understand. Now that we're all on the same side, why can't you speak frankly?" Lightning Snake's face stiffened. He said softly, "This has a lot of difficulties." Difficulties? I wonder what kind of difficulties? Chu Yang asked. Once, the three of us roamed the Jianghu together. At that time, the three of us roamed the world freely. Lightning Snake's words explained the origin of the three great sabresmen. However, 700 years ago, the three of us met the limitless invincible saber. The origin of everything began on that day. Limitless invincible saber. Chu Yang's heart shook. Since coming to the Heaven Imperial Court, he had heard this name more than once. It was another legend from the Heaven Imperial Court. Yes, it's the limitless invincible saber Liu Yongxiong. Lightning Snake's eyes flashed with a sharp saber light. Then, his expression relaxed. He said dejectedly, "At that time, we went forward to challenge him." Liu Yongxiong said, "The three of you can come together." Chu Yang took a deep breath. Just by hearing this, he had already guessed the result. The three of them must have been defeated miserably. At that time, the three of us were in high spirits. How could we be willing to show weakness? In that battle, Lei Ting attacked first, but he was defeated by his opponent with one saber. Zhu Ling went forward to help, but he was also defeated by one saber. Lightning Snake smiled bitterly. Seeing that it was impossible, the three of us joined forces to fight. The result was still, defeated by one saber. One saber. The three of us joined forces and only one saber. Chu Yang's heart shook inexplicably. Limitless invincible saber. Who is this person? What is his cultivation level? Previously, he only used one saber to deal with invincible saber Du and Sunkong. Against Lei Ting's saber, he only used one saber. Even against Lightning Snake and the other two, he only used one saber. Could it be that no one was an exception under one saber? After that battle, the three of us blamed each other, saying that the other party did not cooperate well enough, which led to them being defeated by one saber. Their reputations were all gone. In the end, the three of us parted on bad terms and went our separate ways. After another 200 years, our saber Dao had also improved. Only then did we truly realize that no matter how outstanding our cooperation was, there was absolutely no chance for us to survive the saber strike of the other party that carried the thunder, lightning, stars, sun, and moon of the heaven. However, by the time we realized this, we had already been separated for 200 years. It seemed too late. Since then, we have tried to contact each other again, but our hearts can't go back to the way it was before. Over the years, the three of us have been getting closer and closer. We don't know when it started, but we formed a very strange relationship. As long as one of us is in danger, the other two will definitely come to help. However, if one of us is happy, the other two will definitely not see eye to eye and will definitely join forces to attack him. Lightning Snake shook his head and smiled bitterly. He sighed sadly. Martial world, life, how can I look back on the past? While Lightning Snake was talking, Lei Ting's saber and Giant Spirit saber had already stood at the side of the field. The three of them had the same look in their eyes, full of sadness. It was difficult for an ordinary person to even live for 100 years. However, the three of them had already lived for 700 years. Since then, the three of us have long vowed in our hearts, as long as we don't defeat that invincible saber, the three of us will not get back together. As long as we don't defeat invincible saber, the three of us will never reveal our real names. This sentence was said by Lei Ting's saber, and his voice sounded unusually solemn and heavy. For a moment of anger, it's not worth it to think about it now. Giant Spirit Saber smiled bitterly. Bullshit. Lightning Snake and Lei-Ting Saber scolded at the same time. This is for thousands of years of friendship, and humiliation, and motivation. Lightning Snake said gloomily. With this goal, even if we can't achieve it in our lifetime, we will definitely go further than we originally did. Yes. That's the reason. Lei-Ting Saber nodded vigorously. Giant Spirit Saber was stunned for a moment, and suddenly laughed. It's really rare that the two of you agree with each other so much for so many years. Chapter 1864. Chu Yang sighed in his heart. If we look at the progress of these three people's cultivation, and combine them, based on the battle situation, the possibility of these three people achieving their life's dream is very small, if not impossible. Limitless Invincible Saber Liu Yongxiong is a legend of the heavenly layer, but I'm a legend of the heavenly layer. Humph. Chu Yang smiled in his heart and unsheathed his sword. Come, brother Snake, let's learn from each other. Giant Spirit Saber and Thunder Wild Saber immediately jeered. Use all your strength and beat this stinky long worm to death. Oh right, I said, long worm. Since it's a spar, you can't use your current cultivation, right? Are you so thick-skinned? Yes, you have to suppress your cultivation to the peak of the earth level. If you dare to use your cultivation to suppress others, the two of us will definitely not let you off easily. The two of them hooted loudly and arrogantly. Lightning Snake put his hands behind his back and smiled indifferently. How can I not suppress my cultivation? You guys see. Giant Spirit Saber put his finger to his lips and whistled sharply. Suddenly, a strong smell of gangsters fighting hit Chu Yang in the face. Chu Yang instantly looked askance. With a flash of sword light, Chu Yang didn't say anything and attacked with a move. One ray of cold light pierces 10,000 fathoms. Lightning Snake Saber coiled up like a snake, but he immediately realized that something was wrong. He reacted quickly and raised his saber to block. But Chu Yang's sword energy had already swept over. Lightning Snake let out a strange cry and jumped up, landing 70 to 80 feet away. This scene made Giant Spirit Saber and Wild Thunder Saber forget to taunt him. Although the Lightning Snake had deliberately suppressed his cultivation, he had tens of thousands of years of battle experience. How could he possibly be at a disadvantage with just one move? Was he going easy on him? But wasn't he going easy on him a little too realistic? Why didn't we realize that Stinky Long Worm was a good actor? Then, he saw Chu Yang's sword turn into a long rainbow. His body and sword fused into one. The acting expert Lightning Snake was truly flustered. His forehead was covered in sweat, and he gritted his teeth and stamped his feet. He raised his cultivation level, which was originally suppressed at the peak of the Earth stage, to the early stage of the Heaven stage. In an unreasonable way, he took the blow head-on. But then, he was even more horrified to find that the strength of the early stage of the Heaven stage could not withstand it at all. He had no choice but to raise his cultivation level to the early stage of the Heaven stage. Only then did he manage to withstand Chu Yang's attack. The snake stared at Chu Yang in disbelief. It had never dreamed that such a young man could force it into such a situation. His strength was 2 levels higher than his opponent's, yet he was barely able to withstand this move. If a high-level martial artist were to know about this, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. Chu Yang's attack went smoothly and smoothly. He felt his fighting spirit rising all over his body. His long sword spread out again and sword aura soared into the sky. The tribulation sword technique surged like a great river. The Lightning Snake, who had taken the initiative to propose a spar, regretted it so much that its intestines turned green. He had good intentions just now. He wanted Chu Yang to use the battle to consolidate his cultivation level and stabilize his realm, so that he could use it to make a breakthrough. So he stepped forward bravely and used himself as a target to let Chu Yang vent to his heart's content. However, he had never expected that the moment he stepped forward, he had almost lost all of his ancestors' face. Even with his 10,000 years of fighting experience, he could only take a defensive stance against this small sword. He was so aggrieved that his stomach almost exploded. He did not even hesitate to cheat and slap himself in the face. He had already raised his cultivation level to the early stage of the heaven stage, but he could only barely withstand it. On the other hand, the young man opposite him was actually getting braver and braver as he fought. He used all kinds of marvelous sword techniques that he had never seen or heard of before. He counterattacked like the rising tide of the sea. He was full of vigor. How could I forget that Chu Xiao is the descendant of that senior? How could he be measured by an ordinary standard? Just look at the sword techniques he used. They are simply incomparably exquisite. Too fucking magical. It's simply too damn magical. It's simply too damn magical. It's simply going to take my old life. I'm really fucked. I'm really going to be a tragedy this time. Not only him, but Giant Spirit Saber and Thunder Wild Saber, who were watching the battle, also opened their mouths wide in shock. They watched as the lightning serpent was like a lone island in a storm. Under Chu Yang's waves of attacks, the lightning serpent was faintly discernible, struggling to hold on. With their eyesight, they had naturally seen through the lightning snake's cheating. But neither of them said a word because they knew that he had no choice. Even if they were the ones fighting, the result would probably be the same. They might not even be as good as the lightning snake. The lightning snake's cultivation level was the best among the three. In this situation where he could only take a beating and not fight back, he still had some bargaining chips. It was just that he did not know how long these bargaining chips could last. Chu Yang was in high spirits. He attacked complacently and fought to his heart's content. Where else could he find such an opponent who could only take a beating and not fight back but also completely block his attacks? At this good opportunity, the first sword of the Tribulation Sword technique attacked repeatedly. It was really like the Yangtze River, uninterrupted and with the frequency of a violent storm. Thunder Mad Saber and Giant Spirit Saber, who were watching the battle, were sweating all over. My goodness, fortunately, the one fighting this time is not me. Thinking of this, they immediately took pleasure in the lightning snake's misfortune. It was not that these two were really heartless, or that they really hoped that the lightning snake would be finished. The lightning snake's true strength was there for all to see. If he really encountered a crisis, he would have a way to save himself. The current situation did not prove anything. It was just that seeing the lightning snake in a sorry state swaying left and right, appearing and disappearing, and his clothes were gradually turning into rags at a speed visible to the naked eye. While the two were frightened by Chu Yang's sword technique, they also felt infinite sympathy for the lightning snake. This guy is really fucking pitiful. Fortunately, his true strength is at the level of a half-step celestial being. If he was really at the level of heaven level, I'm afraid he would really become a dead long worm. Although the lightning snake's situation was dangerous, it was actually safe. There was no more danger. This time, Chu Yang fought savagely and repeatedly, waving the Tribulation Sword technique more than 70 times from start to finish. Finally, he fell to the ground exhausted. From head to toe, even the last bit of strength was squeezed out of his body. His head was a little dizzy. As for the lightning snake, who had withstood more than 70 waves of Chu Yang's violent attacks, his body was also swaying. He was sweating profusely, his face was green and white, and his lips were trembling. At least he was a little stronger than Chu Yang and didn't collapse to the ground. I say, is it really that bad? Thunder Mad Saber looked at the lightning snake and clicked his tongue. Why don't you try next time? The lightning snake roared and sat on the ground, panting heavily. Too tired, too fucking tired. The lightning snake felt like an ordinary person who had fought with a cow for an entire afternoon. The muscles and bones all over his body were aching. He didn't know how long it had been since he felt this tired to the extreme. Even when he fought with Mad Saber and Giant Spirit Saber, and even the battle in the small forest, he didn't feel this tired. He hurriedly operated his whole body's cultivation. Only then did he feel his physical strength slowly return. At least this time, it was a pure physical battle to the bone, so the consumption of his cultivation was relatively less. It wasn't difficult to recover. But when he looked at Chu Yang again, his eyes were full of shock. This guy is simply a monster. Chu Yang gulped down a few mouthfuls of water and immediately began to operate his martial arts. After a while, he suddenly jumped up and said a very frightening sentence. Again, the lightning snake disappeared with a whoosh. I need to rest for a while. You go and find Lei Ting to spar. Lei Ting was about to come up with a reason to refuse when he realized that not only was the lightning snake gone, but even the giant spirit saber was gone. He was the only one left. He couldn't help but touch his nose and say hatefully, "These two bastard." On this day, the four of them kept fighting in the courtyard. Actually, it wasn't appropriate to call it fighting. It should be Chu Yang purely attacking, and the three purely receiving. It was just that the three of them had stronger endurance. Every time, it was Chu Yang who was tired first. Therefore, Chu Yang kept repeating the process of exhaustion, rest, jumping up, fighting, and exhaustion. It continued like this until night time. Chu Yang was still in high spirits, but the lightning snake and the other two simultaneously declared that they couldn't take it anymore. There was a limit to how much they could endure. Obviously, their nerves had reached their limits. This guy was getting stronger and stronger each time. His sword technique was getting fiercer and fiercer. He had clearly used this sword technique dozens of times. Everyone should be very familiar with it, but they could still take it with their eyes closed. But every time he used it again, it was as if they had never seen it before. The lightning snake and the other two complained. They hadn't been so tired for at least a few thousand years. Even if they weren't injured, their muscles, bones, and meridians had never been so sore. Damn it. My whole body feels like it's falling apart. I really don't want to move anymore. That night, the three of them gathered under the pavilion in the courtyard. They were all half lying down and chatting. Do you think that our Manor Lord's sword technique was taught by that elder? At the very least, it's a family secret technique. Unified. I have never seen such a sword technique in my life. It's definitely the best sword technique. So, this inheritance, when the word inheritance was mentioned, the three of them became serious. They looked at each other and saw the light in each other's eyes. This time, I'm afraid we're really going to be rich. Following Chu Yang, and having such a strong backer behind her back. In the future, the second half of the night. An exceptionally dazzling and magnificent ray of light abruptly lit up the small courtyard where Chu Yang was resting. A dense and imposing aura suddenly rose up from the small courtyard. Breakthrough. The three of them jumped up at the same time and flew out. They came to the sky above the small courtyard and looked down. They saw Chu Yang sitting cross-legged. His body flickered with a pleasing azure light, which was emitted wave after wave. In the sky, there was a faint heavy pressure. Heaven grade. The three of them trembled at the same time. He broke through, and it was so quiet. Just by looking at the light flickering on his body, it seemed completely different from a normal heaven grade breakthrough. Chapter 1865. After a long time, the blue light on Chu Yang's body slowly dissipated. Then, he stood up again, unsheathed his sword, and practiced his sword technique again and again. This is from P. His expression was focused, his mind was focused, and he was completely focused. He's not just a genius. How can you and I compare to such diligence? Lightning Snake's mind was shaken. During the day, he was fighting 1 against 3. Moreover, he was only at the earth level. The amount of fatigue he had to bear was 10 times more than ours. He didn't rest at night, and then broke through. After breaking through, he didn't do anything else. He immediately started cultivating. Such diligence, sigh. His last sigh came out at the same time as the sighs of the other two. In the past, everyone felt that they had already worked hard enough. But, compared to Chu Yang, they were still 8 streets behind him. Wait. Why does it seem like something is missing? Lightning Snake shook his head and walked back. Then, he suddenly stopped. Something is missing. The other two were also stunned, and they murmured subconsciously. After a long while, the three suddenly turned their heads to look at the same time in shock. Over there, Chu Yang was still practicing his sword alone, quietly practicing, quietly comprehending. There was no abnormality at all, but it was precisely this lack of abnormality that was the biggest abnormality. Giant Spirit Saber looked for a while, and then said blankly, "Normally, a heaven-level breakthrough has to go through the baptism of heavenly punishment. Why didn't he go through this procedure? Isn't this too abnormal?" After he asked, no one answered for a long time. He turned his head to look, and saw that the other two were already standing there, dumbfounded. The three racked their brains, but they couldn't figure out where heavenly punishment had gone. Why was heavenly punishment gone? The three saber experts waited for a long time, and only saw the moon and stars in the sky, and the magpies flying south. They circled the tree 3 times, but there were no branches to lean on, the sky was clear, and there were no clouds for thousands of miles. The scenery was there, but there was no sign of heavenly punishment. The three were at a loss. In this world, there was actually a freak who broke through heaven level without heavenly punishment. That night, the three lay on the bed, tossing and turning without sleep. Each of them was thinking about the illogical part of this matter. The more he thought about it, the more confused he became. Although the three of them were nominally at the pinnacle of the saint level, their actual cultivation had already crossed the threshold. However, they had yet to reach the next step, the heavenly human level. This situation was called half-step Deva realm. He was only a piece of paper away from the true celestial being level. It had come to this point. It was inevitable that he would be knowledgeable, but the three of them had never seen or even heard of such a thing in their entire lives. There was no heavenly tribulation when breaking through to the heaven stage. This was simply too bizarre. The three of them had dark circles under their eyes, but they still couldn't figure it out. As for Villa Master Chu, after breaking through, he took a bath and went back to hug his wife to sleep. Villa Master Chu was a freak and full of energy, but he was still human. After such a long day, he still needed rest and someone to comfort him. The next day, Chu Yang started his busy day. Naturally, the commotion outside was even more intense. As for the sects of the Eastern Royal Immortal Realms, they had already sent the news back. All the major sects were enraged. But the matter had already been settled, and there was no point in being angry. He could only pinch his nose and admit defeat. He hurriedly began to search for geniuses in the sect. Preparing for training was the most important thing. No matter what, the sects of the Eastern Royal Immortal Realms had to go through a series of battles before they could choose their leaders. But there were only 11 years left. This period of time was really short. In the eyes of the high-level martial artists, 11 years was just a short period of time for seclusion. It wasn't even enough to say. As for the two sects that were sent out to encircle the Iron Blood Alliance, they had also arrived at Purple Cloud City. The people from the Dreamlike Veranda's headquarters had also rushed over with the elixirs that Shuexian had mentioned. First, it was Ling Xiao faction's Hai Lianbo who came to the Chu clan in the early morning. He brought 2 storage rings filled with the heads of the Iron Blood Alliance. There were 4,300 head. A very standard number of experts' heads. Definitely not fake. Chu Yang pinched his nose and took a look. Then, he handed it back. "No problem." Minister Chu patted his chest and said, "I'll prepare 80 people for you later. Your sect is working so hard, so I'll round it up to 10 for you." Hai Mingbo smiled from ear to ear, his heart bursting with joy. After confirming the number of people, he made an agreement with Chu Yang. After using the soul-suppressing stone, he would immediately take the people and leave. Before that, he had to keep it a secret. Chu Yang agreed. Even if Great Elder Hai didn't say anything, Chu Yang wouldn't leak the secret at this juncture. When Hai Lianbo went out, he met Shuexian. The two looked at each other and saw the sparks in each other's eyes. Seeing Shuexian walk in, Hai Lianbo frowned and pondered. How many experts' heads could Shuexian bring this time? How many children could she exchange for? The heads are all here. There's a total of 1,750 head. Shuexian took out 2 storage rings. According to the agreement, it's 135 children of geniuses, right? Chu Yang nodded like he was pounding garlic. Yes, this is absolutely correct. There's also the original one. There's a total of 130. Shuexian snorted and said, "For the sake of the sect's future, I didn't expect that our dreamlike veranda would also play the role of assassins. The world is really unpredictable. Chu Yang scratched his head and laughed. Well, everyone is getting what they need. It's worth it. Also, for all of you, this is considered as slaying demons. It's a great merit. The joint attack of the two sects was tantamount to erasing the Iron Blood Alliance. The Iron Blood Alliance, which had been notorious in the Heavenly Imperial Court, finally disappeared from the world forever. Many people in Jianghu clapped their hands in joy. Shuezian snorted and said, "Let's talk about something else." Something else? Chu Yang was waiting for this. Okay. This time, the sect has brought 10 heavenly treasures. The Snow Immortal said indifferently. They include 3 stalks of resurrection grass, 1 stalk of heavenly snow lotus, 1 piece of soul-warming jade, 1 stalk of soul-stealing grass, and 1 piece of 100,000-year-old frost jade soul essence. And Heavenly Devil Battlefield's purple heaven blood ginseng. 3 of them. And it's a ginseng king that already has a soul. Chu Yang grabbed his own thigh. So happy. How could he be so happy? At this moment, Shuezian suddenly frowned and shouted, "Who's there?" She turned around and looked at the void with her phoenix eyes. Chu Yang was shocked. The person who came was not an outsider. It was the sword spirit. However, from the Heavenly Imperial Court till now, other than Xue Leihan, no one, including Zi Xieching, could detect the sword spirit's existence. Shuezian was the first exception. Where's the sword spirit? Chu Yang looked around, looking alert. It was indeed a golden opportunity. Shuezian used all her divine senses to search. Finally, she shook her head suspiciously. She muttered to herself, "Was I wrong? Was it because I was too nervous recently?" Of course, she was right. However, the sword spirit was already in the tribulation space. No matter how good Shuezian was, she would not be able to find him. Shuezian was a little embarrassed after searching for no results. Could it be that he was mistaken? But she had clearly felt a strange soul fluctuation just now. She turned her head. She said, "Regarding the exchange of elixirs for geniuses, is what Villa Master Chu said earlier still valid?" Chu Yang smiled and nodded. He said, "Of course it's valid. However, it must be a rare treasure, a genuine heavenly treasure. If it's just ordinary stuff, you don't have to take it out. These elixirs are roughly of the same standard as the resurrection grass. Some of them are even better than the resurrection grass. I believe they won't disappoint you," Shuezian said lightly, her tone containing great confidence. "Is it good or not? I'll only know after I see it." Chu Yang did not relent. It was obvious that he would not act until he saw the hair. However, his heart brightened. For Shuezian to say so, it must be something good. Shuezian gritted her teeth. She still could not bear to part with it. But now, there was no turning back. "Is there a quiet place?" Chu Yang stood up. "Celestial, please come to my study." Both of them eagerly entered the study. On the table, Chu Yang waved his hand and laid down a large piece of purple crystal warm jade. It was sparkling and translucent. It was actually an entire piece of purple crystal jade essence. Its surface was smooth and smooth. The value of this piece of purple crystal jade essence was probably even higher than the large piece of purple crystal jade essence that day. Shuezian snorted and said, "Villa Master Chu is indeed holding back." Chu Yang smiled lightly. "Don't tell me you didn't hold back." Shuezian laughed and said, "It's human nature." Chu Yang said, 3 days later, there will be another auction. Celestial, I'm afraid you'll have to prepare more this time. The items auctioned this time will be of great use to these children. It'll be even more effective to nurture the sect's talents." Shuezian's eyes brightened. You mean?" Chu Yang nodded. Shuezian bit her lips and remained silent for a while. Her eyes were shining. How could Shuezian not think of Yun Tian's concerns? Since she could already confirm that Chu Yang still had a lot in stock, that elder would not be so biased. Since there was destined to be more, Shuezian had already transferred a large amount of funds and rare materials from the sect. Naturally, she was prepared to buy without restraint and defeat all the opponents. One could imagine that the next auction would involve all the sects in the entire Heaven Imperial Court competing at the same time. This is the resurrection grass that you wanted earlier. Xuezian was the first to take out a strange, blood-red grass. It was sparkling and translucent, as if it was carved out of jade. Dark red blood seemed to be constantly flowing on the purple crystal jade essence. It flickered and flickered. Once it was taken out, the whole study was filled with a strange fragrance. Faintly, the godly soul scripture also seemed to be shaken. This stalk of grass could actually attract godly souls. Chapter 1866. Good stuff. Absolutely good stuff. Just this one is enough for Wu Qianqian to wake up and Du and Sungkong to recover. This is from P. Chu Yang blinked and said, "This is good stuff, but this can only be exchanged for one person." You. Xuezian glared. "Why? Are you going back on your words?" Chu Yang said calmly, "Am I going back on my words? I know. This is a genuine resurrection grass, but it's different from the resurrection grass." He said slowly, "For example, a 5,000-year-old one, a 10,000-year-old one or a 20,000-year-old one. Ha ha. Ha ha ha." His laughter was really treacherous. Xuezian gritted her teeth and said hatefully, "You win. Although Villa Master Chu is young, his insight and knowledge are superior to others." Chu Yang said with a faint smile, "You're too kind. Since you want to test my insight, I can only cheer up and not disappoint you." Xuezian was so angry that her face turned pale. She glared at Chu Yang, speechless. She wanted to swallow Chu Yang whole. Actually, how would Chu Yang know whether the resurrection grass was good or not? How old was it? When Xuezian took out this one, the sword spirit went crazy in the tribulation space. He kept clamoring to get it quickly, but Chu Yang would not make this mistake. Why was he in such a hurry to get the meat that was already in his mouth? The initiative was in his hand. Actually, the problem that really made Chu Yang suspicious was that Xuezian said that there were 3 resurrection grasses. Since there were 3, it was impossible that the quality of the 3 grasses was exactly the same. This was because the resurrection grass definitely didn't grow in patches. It was filled with spiritual energy from thousands of miles away. It was already good that it could support one resurrection grass for tens of thousands of years. Therefore, the medicinal power of the grasses would definitely be different. Since there were 3, Xuezian wanted to maximize the benefits. She would definitely not take out the best grasses as the first one. Therefore, the first one would definitely be of the worst quality. Therefore, Chu Yang fiercely lowered the price. Xuezian was so angry that she almost exploded. She did not realize that she had made a mistake from the beginning. Instead, she thought that Chu Yang had seen through the truth about the resurrection grass. Xuezian was indeed very old. He also had rich experience in Jianghu, but when it came to playing tricks, he was still a few streets behind Chu Yang. Minister Chu was the ancestor of crafty plots and machinations. With just a casual roll of his eyes, he had a series of wicked thoughts. "All right, one then," Xuezian said in a fit of pique. "Deal." Chu Yang took out a bottle of purple crystal jade essence, and put the resurrection grass into it. Then, he turned his wrist, and put it into his storage ring. A thought flashed through his mind. Soon, they arrived at the tribulation space. It fell into the hands of the sword spirit, who had been anxiously waiting for it. The sword spirit hugged the resurrection grass and smiled from ear to ear. "Baby, this second stalk is barely passable." Chu Yang muttered, "This stalk is certainly not enough to exchange for 2 people. But, it's not too far off. I can't give you those children in pieces. I'll just give you 2. You don't have to thank me." Looking at Chu Yang's reluctant expression, he said, "I'm sorry. I am very generous." Xuezian was so angry that she wanted to slam the table and stand up. Not enough. This stalk was more than passable. It was absolutely too passable. Looking at it, the whole stalk of grass had turned into jade, sparkling and translucent. Once it was taken out, it lit up the whole study room with red light. This was definitely a top-grade elixir. And it was not an ordinary one. This was the resurrection grass that could bring the dead back to life. And it was a top-grade resurrection grass. This is a 70,000-year-old resurrection grass. Xuexian was so angry that she wanted to slap Chu Yang to death. Her finger was almost on Chu Yang's forehead. Do you not know, or do you not know? Do you not know what's good for you? There are only a few stalks of this in the entire Heaven Imperial Court. You have the nerve to open an auction house like this? Be an auctioneer? Do you have the nerve to do that? Chu Yang said lightly, I know that I have little knowledge and experience, and I don't know much about elixirs. However, I also know that there are fewer cultivation talents in the Heaven Imperial Court. Elixirs are important, but no matter how many elixirs there are, they may not be able to support the rise and fall of a sect. It seems that talents can. Am I right? Am I right or am I right? All of them are million-year-old elixirs. If there are no talents or experts, it will only lead to the destruction of the sect. But as long as there are talents, once the sect becomes stronger, it will have all kinds of elixirs. Does that make sense? Or does it make sense? Or does it make sense? Xuexian was so angry with Chu Yang that her head hurt. Her words were a little incoherent. But Chu Yang deliberately imitated Xuexian's words. His tone was even more sarcastic and uncompromising. This elixir is enough to save 10 dying geniuses. Xuexian was furious. It can even save heavenly human-level experts. This elixir is priceless. Since you value this elixir so much, and you can't accept my price, then I'll reluctantly give up this elixir. Chu Yang smiled. He leaned back and crossed his legs leisurely. Please bring it back to save those 10 geniuses. To be honest, it's a waste to leave it with me. I don't have any heavenly human-level experts to save. I don't want it, hehe, I don't want it. It seemed that he was addicted to anger. Chu Yang's little mouth was twitching. He was getting more and more infuriating. This was Chu Yang's strategy. I'll anger you to death first. Then I'll talk to you about the price. An expert who has lost his mind is much easier to deal with than a clear-headed woman, Chu Yang thought to himself. Xuexian was so angry that her face turned red. She couldn't speak. If I could take it back, would I not know how to take it back? But since it's here, it's meant to be exchanged for geniuses. What's the point of taking it back? Saving 10 experts. Where do I have so many experts to save? This little guy clearly saw this point. He didn't care about his face anymore. He was going all out to lower the price. Even if the situation was better than the person, there was no need to be so shameless. Now, in Xuexian's heart, Chu Yang's hatred was second only to that of Wu Zhangxiu. Maybe after a while, he would surpass the number 1, at least 3. Xuexian gritted her teeth. She swallowed her anger and took the initiative to lower the price. 3. That's fine too. Who asked you to be the senior of Dreamlike Veranda? You can say whatever you want. Chu Yang immediately sat up straight. He made the final decision and sealed the deal. While making the decision, he didn't forget to poke Xuexian with his word. 3. Even if it's exchanged for 10, it's still worth it. If I use this to make heavy pills or even super heavy pills, it's more than enough. If I add some other things, I can create another 100 geniuses. Although it's not a huge profit, it's more or less 100. How could Xuexian not know that she had been tricked when she saw that Chu Yang had agreed so readily? Moreover, Chu Yang's words were clearly accusing her of using her power to oppress others, and of using her strength to bully the weak. Her willowy eyebrows instantly rose, and her lips trembled in anger. Damn it, can you be any more shameless? Can you be invincible just because you're shameless? I say, Senior Xuexian, exchanging for 3. I'm at a huge loss. Just this once, please don't tell anyone. Once the news gets out, elixirs will be everywhere in the Heavenly Imperial Court. Where can I find so many geniuses? Chu Yang sighed with dissatisfaction. What do you mean by pretending to be innocent after getting a bargain? Xuexian took 2 deep breaths. She channeled her tens of thousands of years of cultivation to forcefully suppress the anger in her chest that was about to explode. However, her face was already red. Elixirs are everywhere in the heavenly imperial court. Do you think elixirs are sheep dung or horse dung? Shameless. Xuexian's lips trembled. Thank you for the compliment. Your evaluation of me is too high. I don't deserve it, I don't deserve it. Chu Yang smiled from ear to ear. Percent yuan hashat. And. A series of vulgarities came out of Xuexian's mouth. However, Chu Yang had already put away the resurrection grass with his sharp eyes and agile hands. 3 is 3. Who asked you to be the senior? Then this third stalk can't be. Xuexian angrily took out the third stalk. Chu Yang's eyes widened, and he couldn't finish his sentence. This one couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as the previous one. This was a good thing in the truest sense. The entire elixir had an absolute jade-like texture. Moreover, the elixir emitted a blood-red mist from time to time. Inside the roots, a faint light radiated in all directions. It was bright and dazzling, as if the whole sky was filled with stars. It was as mesmerizing as a miniature universe that had been precipitated inside. The level of this resurrection grass had definitely surpassed the level of ordinary heavenly treasures. In some aspects, it even surpassed Chu Yang's great elixirs. Even the sword spirit in the tribulation space was stunned. He was also dumbfounded and couldn't make a sound. What do you think of this third one? Xuexian saw Chu Yang's reaction and couldn't help but feel a little proud. How much do you want to exchange for this third one? Chu Yang stared at the third resurrection grass in fascination. In the tribulation space, the sword spirit's notification came. This one has reached the same level as the great elixirs. It's at least on par with them. As long as it's given to the sword spirit, it can immediately split into more resurrection grasses. He must get it no matter what. Even the quality of the tribulation space could be further improved because of this elixir. What made Chu Yang even more tempted was that as long as he got his hands on this elixir, the sword spirit could catalyze the 3 jade snow spirit ginsengs into elixir spirits in the tribulation space within half a year. At that time, the space elixirs would evolve to the point where they would be inexhaustible. I want to exchange this for 10 elixirs. Is that okay? Xuexian was excited. She finally felt that she had the capital and opportunity to ask for an exorbitant price. However, she obviously didn't have the intention to refuse. This little guy is too difficult to deal with. Xuexian felt helpless against this guy. She didn't know where to start biting. This time, she mustered up her courage to say 10 people. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.